friends, welcome back to my channel. I have what could possibly or potentially be a big problem in my African violet room. This is Optimara Fiji. I bought it from a seller on eBay last November. I kept it isolated from my other plants for 3 months in a separate room, and then I repotted it into my mix and put it on the stand with the other plants where it has been for the last 5 months. So that's a total of 8 months that I've had this plant. It seemed to be okay, although at one point I remember thinking that it looked kind of iffy as far as the leaves were concerned. However, it went on to grow and bloom nicely, and I didn't think much about it. I'll show you a few pictures of the plant when it was blooming beautifully. Now it appears to be getting a very tight center, and the leaves are curling down and even away from the pot. It's not just affecting the central crown, but also the peripheral leaves. So from my research, I've discovered that my problem could be one of several things. And the two most likely problems could be excess fertilization or cyclamen mites. And in either case, I'm going to have to discard this plant and throw it in the trash. But let me go through all the possible causes of tight crowns in these plants. One possibility is too much light. When your plant gets too much light, the first symptom is your leaves will curl down, but they will also bleach in color, and then my leaves on this plant have not bleached. My leaves have remained a nice deep green color, so I don't think my problem is too much light. Another problem could be fertilizer, too much fertilizer. When you've over-fertilized your plant, the center leaves become tightly bunched and crowded, and it resembles mite damage. And the new leaves look and feel stiff, and they look twisty, and they snap easily when they're touched, and they stay small. You might see a white crust or a layer of brown built-up fertilizer salts on the rim of the pot or even on the leaves of the plant. And especially in the central crown, you might see some of this buildup. And I've checked my crown for fertilizer salts using a Q-tip, and I did not find any fertilizer salt buildup. So I took this moistened Q-tip, just moistened it with a little water, and I'm kind of rubbing it across these rusty looking areas. If this is excess fertilizer salts, it'll show a little rustiness on the Q-tip. So let's get a good swab here. And as you can see, there's really no rusty residue showing up on the Q-tip at all, as you see. I don't see any white crusting on the soil of my plant. So I don't believe I have an excess of fertilizer salts. I don't think that's what's causing my issue. I fertilize my plants with every watering, and this plant has been growing on a reservoir where it gets continuous fertilizer. But you know, water in the reservoirs can evaporate and leave behind fertilizer salts, leaving the solution to get more concentrated over time. So it could be possible that this is over-fertilization. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. But it would seem that if I had that issue, it wouldn't affect just this one plant. It would be affecting every plant. And I believe I did have this issue years ago. In my previous residence, I had a big collection of violets, and I had too much light and was fertilizing them too much and developed all these tight crowns. It was a real big mess, but meanwhile I had basically replaced that whole collection. These are all fairly new plants. This plant, like I said, has only been in my possession for less than a year. One way to prevent over-fertilization issues is to repot frequently and to flush the soil occasionally with just plain water. So then another possibility related to fertilization is micronutrient toxicity. Micronutrient toxicity usually happens when you don't repot your plant often enough and the potting mix becomes too acidic. Your soil pH is out of the desired range, and when it gets out of the desired range, it can cause one of two problems. Either the nutrients will lock up and not be available to the plant. That's usually if your pH is more alkaline. Now, if the pH of your soil is acidic, like if your plant has not been repotted for a long time, that's the most likely outcome is you're going to have the soil too acidic. That will cause micronutrients to be absorbed into your plant excessively, and you develop what we call micronutrient toxicity. And the symptoms look similar to this over-fertilizing or cyclamen mites. That's the tight centers, deformed leaves, and so forth. And if you do happen to have micronutrient toxicity, there is no cure. You have to just throw your plant away. You won't even be able to restart it from a leaf. Your plant is just gone. So you don't want that to happen. And this is a big reason why we repot our plants frequently, because we've got peat moss in our soil mix and we're adding fertilizer, which is acidic. Peat moss is acidic to begin with. Acid upon acid, pretty soon your pH of the soil that your plant is in can become very acidic. I had one that became very acidic. It was like pH of 4 point something, and I immediately repotted it, and it's doing better. But I actually checked the runoff water from this plant yesterday when I noticed this tight center problem. And the pH was in a beautiful range. It was 6.8, which is just perfect. So that rules out micronutrient toxicity. That is not my issue. The pH of my soil was absolutely perfect. And then the last possibility, which is kind of a sad problem, nobody wants to have this problem, it's cyclamen mites. You can bring them in to your collection from a plant that's from another collection that's got mites. You can bring them in from outdoors, from potted plants. And the sad thing about this is it's very difficult to diagnose because these little mites are microscopic and you really can't see them. And they like to hide in very tight spaces. They hide from the light. They're very difficult to detect. You have to have a microscope. Here we are looking at the crown of the plant under about a 10 times magnification. And you can see the tightness of the little individual leaves, the discoloration, the deformity of the leaves. Here's a flower stalk that's very stunted and deformed. So if you're looking closely, you're trying to see some sort of mite, I see nothing. I mean, here I flipped one of the leaves off, and looking at it under magnification, I really detect nothing that looks like any kind of a mite or an egg or anything. Now, like I said, maybe I just simply do not have a high enough magnification to really tell. But to my eye, I see absolutely nothing out of the ordinary here. So I don't know, although the damage looks like it's caused by mites, I see no actual evidence of mites. So it's really a puzzle to me. I'm not sure what I'm dealing with, but whatever it is, it's not good. Can't see any sign of mite here, that doesn't mean I can rule it out. It might just be too small for my scope. So cyclamen mites are a rather common pest of African violets. They're invisible to the naked eye. They can be very difficult to eradicate. Systemic insecticides don't work against mites because mites are not insects. They're arachnids, or a type of spider. And their life cycle includes several stages: egg, larva, nymph, and adult. So I've examined this plant with the magnifying glass, and I really can't see any sign of any spider mites or eggs or anything like that. But I realize that my microscope may not be high enough magnification. I do see the symptoms, so you always have to consider the possibility and treat accordingly. This is a problem that can spread quickly to your other plants, so you want to first move any possibly infested plants away from your healthy plants to stop the spread of the mites. And just in general, it's important to keep all of your plants separated on your stands. You don't want the leaves touching each other because that's the way that insects and disease can spread from plant to plant. You should also wash your hands after touching a plant and clean your tools between plants. But the very best solution, if you believe you've got possible cyclamen mite, is to just discard the infested plant material. Now, if this is a very precious plant that you can't easily replace, you might want to consider taking a leaf, washing the leaf really well with soap and water, rinsing it off really well at the sink. Then once you've done that, you take a 10% bleach solution and you'll soak your leaf in the 10% bleach solution for 15 minutes, and that would kill any potential mites or their eggs. And then you could restart your plant from a leaf. So that was my plan for this plant. I'm going to discard it. I've already got a couple of leaves that I've washed, and I'm going to be soaking them in bleach and trying to restart this plant because I can't easily replace Optimara Fiji. Now, if you did want to try to treat your plant, there is a recommended treatment where you use hot water, which is 111 degrees, and you soak this entire plant, soil, pot, and all, in a water solution that's held at 111 degrees for 30 minutes. And it's kind of difficult to hold water at that certain temperature for that length of time. If you just get your water to 111, it's not going to stay there for 30 minutes. So you've got to have, like, some people have used sous vide machine or some kind of a slow cooker or something like that. So that's kind of a difficult process. And if I were to do that, I would want to decapitate the plant and just get rid of the root ball so you wouldn't have a big dirty mess. So that's one way you can save your plant if you really want to save it, if it's really a precious plant. Other treatments include using miticides. One is called Avid, A-V-I-D. There are a couple other miticides. And the problem with these is they're rather toxic. You're advised to use gloves and a mask. Do it outside, spray them outside. You've got to spray all the cracks and crevices. And you don't have to do it just once. You have to do it several times because this miticide does not kill the egg stage. It only kills the larva, nymph, and adult. So eggs will hatch out in like 3 to 5 days. They turn into larvae and then adults pretty quickly. So if you just treat the plant one time, you're leaving the eggs behind. You've got to treat it again at least one more time, and preferably a third time. Another problem is the mites can become resistant to whatever miticide you're using. So if you use one and you give them 2 or 3 treatments, and the mites could return if you haven't gotten every nook and cranny covered, then you've got to switch to a different miticide. So really the most practical and effective solution is just to toss the plant that you think has this problem. And like I said earlier, even if the problem is micronutrient toxicity, there's no cure for that. You can't restart it with the leaf. So whether it's micronutrient toxicity or whether it's mites, the plant just needs to go, in my opinion. So this is going to be going into the trash, and hopefully I haven't had it spread to my other plants. So we're going to keep a watch on everything. So I hope this was helpful to some of you. If you've got tight centers on your plants, think of all the possibilities of what it could be and check it out. Be sure to isolate your problem plants from your good plants. And happy growing!